the name of our show.
Hey everybody, how we doing?
Hello.
Welcome to The Large Glass. I'm Todd.
And I'm Terry.
And we are excited to bring you episode 25.
25.
We are a quarter of a century. Well, not really.
Not really. We're 25 episodes old.
25 episodes old.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's awesome.
Yeah, that's a pretty good number.
Yeah. And you know, we've talked about this a lot. And look at our audience. We got Dave. We got Mom. We got Pumpkin Audrey are here. Good to see all you guys. We've been talking about this a little bit and how we grew out of this pandemic. That's how we started.
Yeah, well, we're coming up on a year of lockdowns and quarantines and all kinds of stuff. So
and we gave this a shot. We started doing this show because we missed contact with people.
Yeah, we miss going to the galleries and hanging out and talking about art, all that good stuff. So,
yeah, it's like, you know, all of the bad things that we associate with this, and believe me, there's plenty, and we know that, and I don't want to overshadow that. I think a lot of good is going to grow out of this. I think, you know, like number one, connection, when we start to get it back, is going to be much more appreciated and stronger. Yeah, I think so. You know, it's something I think we all really miss. So, but anyway, we missed talking about art. We missed going to galleries. We missed, you know, being able to communicate this stuff. And so here we are. And for episode 25, we're going to make that our topic of the show.
Why, yes.
You know, we thought, well, let's go look at what other people have done as a response to this pandemic. What has grown out of this?
Right. So tonight's episode is Art in the Time of Corona.
We shouldn't laugh about that, but it's kind of a nice...
It's a play on words. I thought it was...
I like the connection.
Yeah, I like the connection. I
It's a
like
good connection.
Gabriel Garcia Marquez, kind of sexy writer. So, yeah, that's kind of good.
I'm down with that.
All right.
So, let's see. First of all, we drink. The large glass would not be the large glass without
the large glass.
Without the large glass. In this case, it's a beer glass tonight. And we are drinking from... Good evening, everyone. There's Carolyn Thau. Nice to see you. Good to see you. Tonight we are drinking Jack's Abbey. Now, our green screen... Oh, did I reveal that we have a green screen? Actually is playing games with this. A nice yellow can. Jack's Abbey craft lagers out of Framingham, Massachusetts. Because our primary artist tonight comes from Massachusetts. Yep. And we're really happy to feature this work tonight. And so we decided to go with a Massachusetts beer. So we have the Jack's Abbey Pilsner and the Jack's Abbey Lager, House Lager. Yes. I'm going to open this one right now.
You go for it.
You, of course, are pre-gaming, as you usually are.
Oh, and that one's going to go over a little bit.
Sorry about that. I got it all over the place.
That was funny because we thought mine was going to go over too, and it didn't. I'm drinking the lager tonight.
We know that one of these days we're going to open one of these on the air.
Gush.
It's going to go on everything, and all of a sudden our stream's just going to disappear.
Yeah.
All right, little ASMR. Here we go. Oh, it's quiet. Wasn't as gurgly as I wanted it to be. So... I am so excited to toast episode 25. So everybody grab a drink.
Yes.
Episode 25. Here's to 25 more and more because we want to keep going. Yeah. Cheers.
Cheers.
Nice work.
Yeah.
I've really enjoyed bringing these. Wow. That's nice and crisp.
It's nice, right? Mine's nice and light.
Yeah.
Like I feel like this would be great on a summer day. So
it's
like
making me
really hopeful for the summer already.
Come spring now.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So nicely done.
Yep.
So if you're new to our show and you're in the audience right now, please give us a follow, number one. And number two, actively participate in the chat. We love to interact with you throughout this show. Remember, this is not us talking at you. It is us talking with you. There's Ben Hagenbush. Congrats. Hey. Thanks very much. Thank you, Carolyn. We appreciate that. So if you're new to the show, grab a follow. Type something in the chat and chime in on the work because that's what makes the show what it is.
Yeah.
All right, the first thing I want to do, I want to thank Jim Osman.
Yeah, big thank you to Jim Osmond
for last week's show. I also want to weirdly, like, I watched that show and I was like, oh my God, I gushed all over Jim's work.
Yeah.
Like, and that's a good thing, right?
Yeah,
I love
we
Jim's
were very
work.
excited about his
but
work.
I just realized, I was like, oh my God, I barely let the guy get a word in edgewise.
No, it was great though.
But I really was excited to do that show.
It was really exciting, and I'm hopeful that we can have more artists on the show because interacting with them brings a whole new level. So
yeah. And that's actually something we need to kind of mention to everybody. And Audrey says that was a great show. David Backus is here. How you doing? Nice to see you. That's something we really want to mention in terms of supporting those artists. So right now, at this point in our show's history, you know, we're relying on the kindness and the good faith of artists that we have a relationship with to spend their time and energy to come on this show. At the same time, I make an effort to say artists should be supported, right? I'm like, buy art, support artists. Yet somehow I feel like I'm not doing that by saying, hey, come on the show for nothing.
Yeah.
So what we really want to do at some point, as we begin to really dig into fundraising and grant writing and trying to really make the show come up to the next level, is we would like to offer stipends to artists to come on the show.
Yeah, to at least say thank you, or just, you know, provide something to them, because we want to support the arts in every way that we can. So that's one of the goals with our fundraising.
Exactly. And that artist takes more than an hour out of their time to be with us, right? Which is time that could be spent in the studio. And I feel like they're in a lot of ways sharing their creative practice educationally, like we are with the world.
Right.
They need to be compensated for that. They
Right.
need to be so when we're asking for support and we're asking for people to help us out, that's one of the key reasons we're doing that, because I would like to be able to, you know, send an email out to someone.
Yeah.
Maybe one day it's someone that's, you know, someone big. Not that Jim Osmond isn't big,
Jim Osmond
but
is
I would love to
big.
vary it. I'd
Yeah.
love to grab the new Instagram artist that's popping up.
Yes.
And also grab someone who's had a career for decades, and
yeah,
really
I hear
has
ya.
their foot in the door and talk about their work too. And that requires a little bit of support. So Carolyn's like, that was an awesome episode. Thanks. Springtime weather next week. Yes, thank you very much. If you're where we are, I don't know if everybody's getting that, but hopefully. Karen's like, that's a fabulous idea, especially now because of the pandemic. Yeah. And they need it, right? So
We do. And more on that later, because one of our featured artists
tonight.
Yeah. So we'll talk. We'll talk later. So
We'll talk.
Yeah.
We don't want to jump ahead. You know, sometimes
I don't want to blow the surprise.
sometimes
so.
the chat can, you know, cause us to start saying things. We're like, oh, we
and
should have
like,
waited to say that.
Oh yeah. So we're just gonna wait a little bit.
We'll wait a little bit on that. Should we? Well, we have a
got a
new
lot
sub.
of stuff
We have a
on
new
there.
sub goal, and that's part of the support thing.
Yes.
But we put a new sub goal down in the bottom. Where is it? That's the sub goal.
There, 15.
That's the follower goal. So we have a new sub goal of 25. We're at 15 right now, or 16. So we're hoping to get to our number of 25. So think about that, and let's move on.
Okay.
Let's move on.
All right.
Should we go do some art news?
We could do some art news. Were we going to talk about incentives?
We can.
Or were you waiting?
Oh, no, I usually do the support thing just before we go to the artist.
Okay,
You mean
all right.
the incentive for the sub goal?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll grab that just before we
Okay,
dive in.
okay, all right,
So,
all right. Okay.
all right. Let's go here and let's take a look at art news. So what is going on? Well, first of all, we have the Brownstone Art Gallery. Now, we mentioned them last week, but I would really like to, number one, say that I'm honored that David Backus of the Brownstone Art Gallery has asked Terry and I, to host their closing party for their 2021 group photo show, which we're honored.
Unbelievably honored.
Yeah, to do. So what's great about that is we're going to get to bring you to them and them to us and have one large closing party where we moderate a panel of hopefully six or seven of the 7 artists in the show, right? And have a discussion. So that's going to take place on March 14th at 3 p.m.
Yep, it's a Sunday.
It's a Sunday. So we encourage you to get a nice bottle of wine, a little brick of cheese, make it like a reception.
Yeah, make it like a reception. Get into it. I will remind you, it's also daylight savings that day. So just kind of set the clocks in the right direction.
Yeah, don't miss it by an hour.
Yeah.
There's Mike Rader. How's it going? Good to see you. Yeah, so we're going to be hosting that, and we're really excited for that. Now, stay tuned for details on how that's going to work exactly, just because some of the platforms that we'll be broadcasting through and all of that, that's still being determined. So we will get back to you on next week's show with the exact details so that you can join in. So I think that's really exciting. In the meantime, pop over to the Brownstone Art Gallery and their link, which I'm about to throw up on the screen right now, you can get to them on their Instagram account, or you can go to thebrownstoneart.com and you can visit that exhibition right now. It's a fantastic show. Definitely go take a look at it. Next. All right, what do we got next? We have, on the local scene, we wanted to give a shout out to Carolyn and Whittemore CCC and just kind of talk about Tewksbury, New Jersey momentarily.
Yes, absolutely.
So CCC is Community, Culture, and Conservation. That's what the 3 C's are in their name. Whittemore is a 180-acre estate that has been turned into a fantastic place for arts programming, hiking, conservation, gardening, farm-to-table dinners. They have extensive programming there. They have a new sculpture garden. This is a piece by David Horowitz that you can go see there right now. So if you're in the Hunterdon County area and you have a chance, we encourage you to go take a look at that. And that is Whittemore CCC. And you can find them on Instagram at Whittemore CCC. All right, so go have a look at that. Shout out to Carolyn. Thank you. All right. One more thing. All right, so Court Tree Collective Gallery.
Court Tree Collective Gallery.
That's in Brooklyn.
That's in Brooklyn, and they have 2 shows up right now.
They do have 2 shows.
They do, and one is closing pretty soon, but I don't think we're going to talk about that one first, correct, in the slide presentation?
No, this one is actually closing on May 10th. This is Stephen Telasnik, and Stephen Telasnik's sculptures are up at the gallery until May 10th. You can see those pieces online, but you can also stop by the Court Tree Collective Gallery. Yeah. You can also get to their website, which is courttree.com. The second show that they have is an online exclusive by Ken Rush called Poolside. It's very cool.
It's very cool, and it's ending pretty soon, so you want to see it now. It closes on March 10th.
Closes March 10th. So get over to courttree.com and take a look at Ken Rush's show of paintings called Poolside. It's pretty awesome. So we have one other thing in our whole little news segment that I wanted to talk about really quickly, and it kind of goes towards tonight's theme.
It does
a little bit
towards tonight's theme.
So,
you
want to start?
I can start. We're gonna review the work of a traveling exhibition by an artist who is now located out in the Hudson Valley, but she's originally from Alabama. She was in Brooklyn for quite a few years, about 12 years or so. But during the pandemic, she created a show which was meant to be passed around. And you're going to see a beautiful
rendition of that. Yeah, she calls it a traveling exhibition. Her response to the pandemic was, well, we can't get to the galleries, so let's bring the galleries to people individually. So she decided to create a book, a beautiful book, a very large book of prints of her photos. The book was placed into a box that she handcrafted.
The box almost acts like the gallery. And it's a beautiful wooden handcrafted box with leather belts around it. This was passed around quite a few individuals in our community, and we sent it out, and it's still going all throughout New Jersey. We saw some New York addresses on it, and it's just a fantastic way to share art. And in the back of the book, of course, people wrote in their comments, so she had a section for interaction.
Should we talk while we look at the video?
Yeah, let's
because
do that.
We made a quick little video. It's about a minute and a half. We'll talk through it, but you can actually see this thing. It's actually really quite beautiful. Her work in this book photographically is it definitely relates to the other work that's on her website, which is Dana Matthews Studio. You can see in Instagram. Pardon my stumbling over that. But take a look at this. So there's the box. You can see it's got these nice hinges and leather straps. Inside, she's written a little history on the project. Oh, by the way, the project, I should say, is called Through the Garden and Into the Wood. She has a hashtag associated with that. And you can kind of see what's going on here with the prints that are inside. We do skip over. We don't want to reveal the entire book. Maybe it will come to you. This exhibition, it travels until May 31st, and then she requests that it be returned to her. It's gorgeous.
It's gorgeous, and there's some really cool features about it. Like in the back, for example, she put in a little repair kit. She was expecting a little bit of wear and tear to happen from all the people looking at it and writing in it. But she was thoughtful enough to provide a way for people to kind of fix it along the way. So I'm curious to see what happens with this after the show has ended, like what she's going to do with it and what happens with it. But what a fantastic idea.
I love the notion that you can actually have the signatures in the back. So what's beautiful about that is for each person this book touches, the piece changes as the history is recorded and grows in the book, which is really quite a nice sentiment or intention behind it. I was actually really delighted to see that even some kids had written in the back of the book, and they were like, "Hi, my name is so and so. I'm an artist too."
Yeah, and they drew some pictures, so it was a shared experience, which is something that we're missing right now. So.
Absolutely, and it's traveling around and touching people's lives, which I think is really quite nice. So, so Dana Matthews, you can get to, you know what, there it is. I'm sorry. Eyes, you need them. And, we'll leave that there. But check her out at Instagram. You can go to @DanaMatthewStudio. Now it's Dana Matthews is her name. Dana Matthew Studio. I guess she didn't want to be redundant on the S, and I get that. Check her out on Instagram. Great project. We felt really honored to have that come through our house.
It was really great. And just hearing the stories of some of the people who had it before us too,
we just got to pass it to someone we knew.
Yeah.
Right. So it's kind of going through channels, but it's traveled.
Yeah.
All right.
Great.
So let's see. We got to do some birthdays. Let's go do some birthdays real quick let's see. Notable birthdays today. Oh, we're going to start with this guy.
We're going to start with this guy.
Giving you the side eye.
Actually, his birthday was yesterday. He is known for one of the most famous paintings.
What, do I got to put his name up there so we can say it? There we go. Botticelli. He was born back, I actually got the years this time around, at 1445, March 1st. And here's the Venus. Which I actually stood before in Florence and was just like flabbergasted by this painting. I love this painting. I was actually surprised at how large this painting is.
Yeah, it's a beautiful painting.
Yeah. So Botticelli, happy birthday to you. Let's move on. Oh, this
We have
guy.
Another Renaissance painter.
Yes.
Now, he did not paint this piece, but this is
a picture of him.
Yes. Michelangelo. He was born on March 6th in 1475. I don't think I even have to say what he created because he's so famous.
And we decided to pick the Pieta.
But here you go. So keeping consistent with our format, we went ahead and threw one up there anyway. So yep, this is the Pieta.
Right. We looked at several different ones to put up there as an image to represent him. We chose this one because it was indicative of Terry mourning over my death after trying to put this show together tonight. But I digress.
Moving on.
Dana Matthews' piece is kind of like an oral history. Yeah.
Yes.
It is absolutely an oral history.
Yeah. Actually, the handwriting in there is absolutely gorgeous too.
She has beautiful handwriting.
Typography. There weren't any errors either, because I was like, wow, she didn't even scratch anything out. So I'm just, putting that aside there, but it was gorgeous. Yeah.
Right. And I like the way that. I mean, one thing I did, I really paid attention to where the book had gone, because everybody signed it with where they were from.
Yeah.
And she requested that the book's whereabouts be sort of revealed. Like if you're going to post something, say where it is so that she can follow it.
Yeah.
And so it moves about the country. So, yeah, it's a beautiful thing. I remember seeing the Pieta in the 63 World's Fair. Oh, my God. Yeah, I saw the Pieta in Yeah, that holy place.
Yeah.
Right, Vatican City.
I did too.
Right. I saw the Pope that day.
Oh, yes, you sure did.
I happened to take a train to Rome on a Thursday just to kind of move around. I went into the Vatican. I had planned to go see the Sistine Chapel.
Yeah.
But I happened to wander in. There's a service going on. I didn't realize it was Holy Thursday when I was there.
Fantastic luck.
And Pope John Paul II comes down the aisle, and I was just like, did I just see the Pope? It was just coincidence.
Wow.
And I'm not even a very, spiritually, I'm not, I was just like, wow, what an amazing thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's move on to some other birthdays.
Yes.
This guy.
This
I
guy.
love this picture of him. He's like, I know how to paint. Milton Avery.
I love Milton Avery. He's actually one of my favorite artists. Milton Avery was born on March 7th, 1885. Expressionism, abstract paintings, figurative. I love his colors, his palette.
Yeah. And here's
figures in
here's
there.
one that I picked out for this. I love this piece. I think that Milton Avery's span of painting, I kind of like to look at his span of painting and see how he handled the figure throughout time.
Yeah.
And I'd be curious to actually look back on his history a little bit. Because things change quite a bit. The simplicity of his figure changes a little bit, and I'm curious about that, why he chooses to focus a little bit more at some times than others. Amber, 1, 2, 3, 4. Wow, I love the Dana Matthews book. What an incredible experience she is creating for people. A true gift. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We appreciate that. And I know she does too. I'm hoping maybe she's out there watching, but we did reach out to her to see if she wanted to join in on the show tonight and hang out in the chat. Pumpkin Audrey says, which Pope? John Paul II. He was very old at that time. So, and of course, the last birthday of the evening.
Yes, this is Piet Mondrian.
Piet Mondrian.
And he was born on March 7th, same date as Milton Avery, just in 1872. Dutch painter, post-impressionism, fauvism, modern art, cubism, abstract, all of that. I think of 80s clothing when I see him. I hate to say it, but that was very big because I was a teenager and that was popular. And I know I'm just like, you're like, shush, Terry.
No,
but
I'm not.
That's what I think of when I see his stuff.
And I think of two stories. One has an art background, and the other one has a kind of a real kind of envy to it. The first one is I think of Garrett Rietveld's Red Blue Chair, which was sort of taken from the color scheme in these pieces. So, and I had done an actual reproduction of a Red Blue Chair, which was subsequently stolen. It's gone. And the other thing I think of is I had a friend years ago that I did an artist residency with at Vermont. And we were all sitting around telling stories about our childhood. And he said, yeah, when I was a kid, some kids love their teddy bears. Some kid loves their Legos. I walked around with a small reproduction of a Piet Mondrian painting in my hands all the time. I took it to bed with me. I'm like,
wow.
I want to be that kid. What a fantastic art story to tell your friends, right?
Yeah.
Birds of Yellow, beautiful unveiling of my traveling exhibition, and I love your show.
Oh, she
there
is
she
with
is.
us.
Thank you, Dana.
Thank
That's
you.
really nice. We were honored to have it. We really appreciate that. This is the beautiful thing about this format is that, here we are showing a piece of work, and the artist is here talking to us.
That's
so
awesome.
thank you for that.
Yeah,
we really
thank you
would
for
love to
joining
hear
us.
more. Once this show is over, after May 31st rolls around, you get it back.
Yeah.
Reach out. We really want to know what happened. It would be great to hear. Birthdays are over. We've got some cool birthdays coming up next week too.
We do.
So I'm excited about that.
I am too.
All right. Let's see where are we going next with this whole show.
Oh,
Should we just do a small segment on a quick thing on support because we have a new giveaway.
We can do that.
Do you want to do the giveaway?
Sure.
All right.
Sure.
So you remember we had a cabinet card, painted cabinet card that we gave away last week during the show for our 15 subscriber goal. And let me see, we got to find it here. I got to go here. Hold on a second. I always muddle this up. Here we go. Giveaway at 25 subscribers this time around is going to be Kasia St. Clair's The Secret Lives of Color.
This is a fantastic book.
We love this book.
It actually dispels the stories behind all different kinds of colors, from like Naples yellow.
The narratives
cobalt.
in this is
really great stories. You could have it by your bed at bedtime and cover a story a day. She goes from specific colors. Like she covers all the different kinds of greens and melons and
Right.
peaches
So
and
specifically
yellows.
like yellow ochre.
Yes.
And a story associated with yellow ochre.
Yep. And how the pigment was found or
fantastic.
acquired. So this is a great book. We're going to give it away when we hit the 25 subscriber.
That's right. We'll do a raffle, and we'll ban my mother from being in that
Yes,
raffle.
and Mom can't come. we'll give you something else.
Yeah, we'll just get you the book now and call the whole thing off.
Okay.
All right. So let's see. So we have some main information. We got to get into our show here.
We do have to get into our
We're
show.
at 8:25. We're way behind.
Okay, we're going to get
We
into
are
this
way behind
right now.
All right. So let's take a look at who we're featuring or what we're featuring tonight, right? So tonight, Art in the Time of Corona.
Yes.
Which is your play on words.
Yes.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that.
And when we were thinking about this show, we were doing some Google researching.
Trying
we were
to find
looking up
work.
different articles on what people were doing with the pandemic in terms of art and stuff. And there were some really awesome things. There were some cheeky things. There were some cool things.
But we decided to start on a journey to getting to who we're actually doing. So this is
Yeah.
not our artist tonight, but this is a piece that kind of starts us out.
This is a fun piece. This was an installation piece by an artist named Kimberly Kelzer. This is in Freeland, Washington. It's called The Distancing Bench.
Yes, distancing bench. And so you go first.
Well, as you can see, it's a bench. It's got the two carved seats at either end. They are spaced 6 feet apart. It's got the ruler. It's a mixed media piece. So I thought that this was pretty cool.
Agreed. It's pretty cool. I mean, it gets straight to the point.
It does get straight to the point.
Straight to the point.
Yep.
And it's like, okay.
You can tell the meaning right away.
I think this piece will have, I mean, right now, this piece to me kind of generates a little bit of a, 6 feet apart. I have a feeling in 20 years, this piece will have a lot more impact.
And I like it for the public participation aspects of it. It's, people are going to appreciate it for what it is, and they might get a smile out of it and stuff like that. So that was kind of cool.
Right. And from that sort of standpoint of the tongue-in-cheek thing, let's look at this next one. And this is a piece by Jennifer Markowitz. This is Mask Series number 3, Stimulus Check. So it's a hand-embroidered mask to look like a stimulus check from the United States Treasury. And again, it's a very sort of straight line right to...
Yeah, and I will say that these artists that did do this work, both the previous artist and Jennifer Markowitz, they're actually very skilled craftsmen. Kimberly Kelzer, I can't
Kimberly
see.
Kelzer.
She works with wood all the time. She does really great pieces. And Jennifer Markowitz is fantastic with fiber arts. I've looked at her Instagram. I love some of her stuff. I thought this was really cute and to the point.
Right.
I hate to say the word cute, but I was like, wow, how clever. So it was something that we were looking at too.
But I feel like in terms of, the pandemic and the necessity that came out of this isolation, now we're going to get, we got one more, but then we're going to get a little bit deeper.
We're going to get a little bit deeper.
And I feel like, that's something. So this piece is Jamie Holmes, and it's called Endurance. It's a painting. And, we see two people in their house, these two men doing each other's hair, which is, something we've all experienced. And again, it's a lot of these pieces are very illustrative of the situation, right? They're more, and don't get me wrong, I love this painting. I love the pattern work in the front and in the back. It's a nice painting. But I feel like it illustrates the pandemic, right? As does,
Well, this one I think is a portrait of what's happening.
Correct.
And it gives you an intimate experience because we're in somebody's home. And at the time of the pandemic, there's also a lot of racial and social issues going on. So this painting kind of brought that back a little bit harder for me. So I thought that this was a really good example of what people are creating with the pandemic. I think this painting could survive beyond the pandemic too.
Sure.
I think you could absolutely take it out of context of everything that was happening as well.
And historical context in any painting is important to know. Like, when was it painted? What was going on then?
Yeah.
Memory Vessel's here. She's like, break it on down, TNT.
Aw.
Good to see you. Right. So again, we've kind of like, we're looking at very direct responses to it. And the next piece is also a direct response, but in a very, very different way.
A very
and
different
I think
way.
that's why I love this so much.
Yes.
So let's take a look at this. So this is the Shelter in Place Gallery. And you're like, okay, it's a gallery with some paintings in it. And you're right, it is. You want to talk a little bit about Eben Haines?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit. So the owner of this gallery is named Eben Haines. He's an artist himself. He was working at the Museum of Fine Arts.
The MFA Boston.
Yeah, he comes from a family of artists, and his family was very involved in museums, so he knew a lot about how to work in galleries, hang shows, all of that kind of stuff.
The rule of thumb, can I interrupt real quick?
Yeah.
The rule of thumb for people coming out of grad school from the arts is you basically work in one of two areas, right? You get your MFA and you either go into art handling or you teach.
Okay.
Right? And the question was always, what's the better route to go? Will I get an art show? Will I get a show if I teach, or will I get a show if I, work in the gallery? And my passion was always teaching.
Yeah.
So I went straight into the teaching, and I had friends that were working for some of the big name galleries in Chelsea and moving some fantastic work around.
Yeah.
Yeah, they got the shows.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, go back to talking about this. I'm sorry.
Well, so he was working at the museum, but because of the pandemic and because of the way resources were, I believe he was laid off from his job, as were many others. So, that was one of the things that was occurring. The other thing that was occurring was he was looking around at his artist friends. He had a shared studio with other people,
Right.
and he couldn't get to it because there's social distancing. So he was having a hard time finding the space and the time to create. So all of these things were happening. He was looking at his budget. He was
What could he afford?
What could he afford? He was thinking of opening his own venue so that people were able to show their work, so that he could provide a forum for people to share art.
Right.
So as you can see, this is the gallery that he opened. It's what he could afford.
Right. And I think
it's not perfect. I mean, there's a couple little flaws here and there, like the electrical outlets are not the greatest, and then there's stains on the ceiling and stuff, but it's a beautiful space. The lighting is fantastic.
And you guys are out there thinking to yourselves, why the hell are they showing us this gallery?
But isn't it gorgeous?
It's a beautiful gallery.
I love galleries.
It's a gallery, right? We love galleries.
Yeah.
So great, he got a gallery. But here's the problem. The whole problem was we couldn't go to galleries in the first place. And then we think to ourselves, well, why are they telling us about this gallery? It's not like they're going to have a big blowout reception.
Yeah.
And then...
and then this is one of his pieces.
This is one of his pieces in the gallery.
He was one of the first artists featured in the space, so you can kind of see what it looks like in there.
And then he did another, so this is also another taboo, right? I mean, if you are an artist and you curate a show, you shouldn't, or at least the rule used to be you didn't curate yourself into the show. It seemed too self-serving and maybe possibly marred the intention behind the curation, right? So, and that makes sense. It's almost like a conflict of interest, right? But here, Eben is curating himself into his space. Fair enough. It's a new gallery, right? Let's put my work in there.
He does fantastic stuff. He works in assemblage, very nature-oriented ecology.
Right.
He does portraits, a lot of encaustic work, oil paintings.
Right.
I love his aesthetic.
He's got this, these pieces under glass and so on and so forth. And I'm sorry I had to pull these from Instagram so you can see all the little markers on there. But then we get to this. And I'm just going to hold that thought. Go ahead.
So this is the Shelter in Place Gallery.
And the Shelter in Place Gallery is, in fact, inside this white foam core 20-inch by 30-inch box. So everything you just saw, it is that if you look up on the top of that ceiling, you can see those little skylights. Take a look at the outside of this box in the center. There's the skylight. And we can see it to scale now. Sculptori says, I hear when you put yourself into a show, it's called organized by...
Good to know.
I'm down with that. I think that's okay. I actually never really stood behind... I mean, personally, if I'm an artist and I'm going to curate or organize a show, I probably have an underlying aesthetic preference that might go with mine.
Oh, sure.
Right?
And if you look at his artwork, it goes with the aesthetic of the overall gallery.
Correct.
Like they go hand in hand. They've got that rustic.
Correct. So Eben Haines, and Eben's partner is...
Yeah, her name is Delaney Dameron.
And they created this space to have shows in, and then they reached out to artists that worked in normal media normal, what does normal mean? They worked in a variety of media on a normal scale, but to make their work in miniature, which has an interesting backstory too, right? It
does. So just to give you the dimensions of the gallery, the width is 20 inches, the depth is 30 inches, the height is 18 inches. The representation is 1 inch equals 1 foot. So that is the scale that they were trying to work. It opened on March 27th in 2020.
Right at the beginning of this whole thing.
Right at the beginning of this whole thing. And they prioritize the shows in lots of different ways. First of all, they're from Massachusetts, and he was looking around at his friends. When I was talking about he was having a hard time going to his studio to work, one of the reasons why he created this gallery was so that people could work at home, either in their own studio or at the dining room table, and have works to share in the gallery.
Right.
So they had to meet the dimensions that could show things here.
Yeah, and this to me is a really fantastic. I mean, I can't help but keep going back to this image.
I know,
right? Because I've even been put off from going to my external space, and my external space is much more private than most artists can have. But the very notion of just going there in general, I've been turned off to, because I don't know, I'm just a little bit weird about that kind of exposure right now.
Right.
But in this situation, it's like, okay, we're home.
Yeah.
Right. And these artists that were once making paintings in a studio where they needed a whole wall might now be sitting down in a very, very personal. It brought everything, close.
Yeah, it really did.
Which I love. So we've got some example photos here, and we actually want to talk a little bit about some of the artists that are in this space.
We do. I do want to say that they did have a couple of qualifications in the beginning when they first started this project. Like they had a couple of criteria to meet. So mostly they were looking to help the locals, Boston-based artists, give them a place to display their work. Of course, they open it up to nationally and international artists too as time went on.
Right.
This became very popular too. This is like an Instagram sensation. They have been featured all over the place. Juxtapost, PBS, Time Out, Hyperallergic, Jerry
The
Saltz
thing has gone
once
totally
mentions them.
viral.
It's viral.
And the thing I love about it is that the exhibition exists on Instagram. So the pieces, whatever the artist decides to make, is created. It is shipped to Eben Haines, to the Shelter in Place Gallery, oftentimes with its own miniature crating.
Yeah, the artists got so creative that they scaled down packaging so it looked like miniature crates and miniature bubble wrap.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, let's go. Can we go back? Because now going back to the beginning of our slideshow here will reveal. Now all of a sudden these images have a whole different meaning, right? Like look at the way the light comes through that window and hits that wall.
He really took advantage, I think, too, of like the golden hour of when the sun was going down at certain points when the light was coming through his own window so that it would go through the windows of the gallery that way too.
And Birds of Yellow, she says, this is such an innovative idea, very surreal. And I'm glad, that we've got another pandemic-inspired artist commenting on this, because I think that's important.
Yep.
But even the floorboards and the irregularities in their placement.
I love the detail that he did. Yep, the bricks, there's areas that are, unpainted, just like a rustic gallery. Like if you look at the wall there on the right, but when you look at the roller strokes, I mean, he even scaled down the roller so that it looks believable that size roller painted that gallery.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, like every little detail. There's water stains on the ceiling. you know, and he thought about all the different things he would normally, you know, he thought about what he could afford.
Right.
And he replicated it.
And this goes to show you that the art handling side of the career move for the recent graduate or the young artist working as an art handler, there's a real skill set involved in that. I mean, a real skill set. You learn to do certain things, and I can remember I did work in that for a little while, and I learned a fair bit, especially about packaging things. So the notion of building miniature crates for a gallery like this is just I love that idea, right? Yeah. So I just wanted to bounce back so that you could just kind of get, that's a little too far. You could just kind of get an idea of what this space looks like in context, right? How those beams in the ceiling have the right amount of rust on the various plates that hold those trusses together. It's spectacular. So let's go back to where we were because we've got a few artists in here to mention.
I will also say that when they were prioritizing artist submissions, they were also looking for issues. Like they wanted art that addressed the current political situation,
social justice
climate,
work.
social justice, LGBTQ,
yeah.
Racial injustice, like that. That's really what they were looking for.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I think that, and Birds of Yellow is mentioning the flaws. And I actually do want to go back to that for a minute because there's something about this fooling the eye. And I think about things like, a wax museum, for example. You go to one of these Madame Tussauds places, right? And you have these figures that are so realistic, so meticulously made, no flaws whatsoever.
Right.
And somehow the fakeness shines through that. You don't say, I'm waiting for him to move. And if you do, you're a liar. I don't think you're really waiting for them to move because you know they're not going to move. However, in a space like this, the flaws make it. And don't get me wrong, I know the flaws are intended to be an exactitude and care of craft.
Of course.
But there's something about that. There's something about that flaw that breathes life into this.
Yeah, it makes it more authentic, I think.
And it's also the camera lens. Yeah. Right? The camera lens itself is also going to give just a hair.
Well, even his detail with the windows, I actually think of Vermeer when I look at the windows because he was a very particular artist who wanted the smudge stuff all over the windows because it helped with the lighting. Yeah. And it helped with his compositions and flesh tones and everything. So when I'm looking at the windows here, I'm pretty sure that, it was intentional to kind of make it a little bit more believable. And to help with the lighting and to help with the realism in it as well.
Yeah, no, that's a great point.
If they were clear, we wouldn't believe it.
Right,
so,
and there's some images coming up in this where you can actually sort of see through the translucency in the windows, and there's trees outside. Did you want to talk about this particular artist?
Oh, I love this artist. Okay, so some of the artists, I will say, some of them are fantastic and some of them are okay. Some of them work in miniature, so this wasn't too far of a cry. I felt it wasn't too far of a cry to contribute something to the gallery. So we didn't really focus too much on the artists that already were working in miniature. I know that the context changes when they present it in this space because it's actually to scale. But we were focusing on the artists that really took the time to hone down their craft to fit into this space. So this was one of them. I actually just have to flip a page of my notes backwards.
There was one commentator who was talking about this project, and they said that they felt that the gallery itself was more interesting than the art.
Yeah.
And
that was on PBS.
Was it on PBS?
Yeah.
Well, at first I thought, oh, yeah, that could be. But then we dug into some of these artists a little bit. We dug into some of the artists, and we found out that that's not exactly true. The artist, the gallery itself is gorgeous, but so is some of the And you got to go
artwork.
You got to go a little bit deeper into this art and understand it in the context, and also understand where the artist came from. So why don't you throw in a little bit about this artist?
This first artist here, her name is Chelsea Revel. and she's at Chelsea Rebel on Instagram. And she does these pieces of domesticity and compiling them up, and purity and organization. I just love the aesthetic in the gallery. I actually picked that just because it appealed to me. So she was a good introduction into this. I don't have like a ton of notes on her.
That's okay. I mean,
but she's the first one that we picked.
And then we're going to move on to this guy.
Okay. And when I first looked at this piece, I was like, okay, this is kind of cool. And then I looked it up, and then they had made a little notation that he was more than what I knew. So this is by an artist named Roberto Lugo, and he's actually a famous ceramicist and graffiti artist.
I love the combination of those two genres.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. He's a social activist, educator, poet. He's this particular piece was a juxtaposition. He does these clay pots. He's got on one side Malcolm X, and then on the other side he has Lil Wayne. So he combined those two images together. He was actually in part of a curated show for the Shelter in Place Gallery called Craft School.
Right.
And they had a couple of artists that were really prominent displayed in that show. His website is Roberto Lugo without wax. But that was just one of the examples of someone who is a lot larger than I realized. I learned a lot in looking through this gallery, and we really encourage you to go on Instagram and dive deep into this, because you're going to be exposed to a whole bunch of artists.
Right. So you want to look up Shelter in Place Gallery on Instagram, not Shelter in Place, just Shelter in Place Gallery, and you'll find this, and you can just scroll through all of the shows, and it's really quite good. This artist is also a well-known artist.
Yes.
That did participate in the gallery.
Yeah. This is by Jessica Burko, and she did a drawer series for Shelter in Place. As you can see, her larger work, she does a lot of photo transfers on usually wood. She reclaims a lot of wood, a lot of materials. It's almost like an assemblage, decoupage, installation. She works larger than this. So these are tiny little drawers that she scaled down for the gallery. She does like wax and caustic over some of the images as well. But in real life, she has much larger pieces. She shows all over the place in Boston. She's, BFA in RISD, MFA at Rochester Institute of Technology, lots of affiliations with museums and galleries and such.
We thought about actually showing images of these artists' actual, and I shouldn't say actual work because this is also their actual work, but the work that they did before Shelter in Place Gallery.
Before the pandemic.
And it almost felt like it sort of took away a little bit from what was going on here.
It did.
Right. Or at least I'd like to think about this work and the artist's work in the context of this miniaturized space, and not necessarily, at least in this show, crowded out with the work. Because, for example, this artist here, when you look at this work, I kind of like flipped right by this work, I'll be honest. It didn't, I was trying to find something that really showed off the gallery space and took advantage of the gallery space. But then when I went and looked up her work in the rest of the world, it feels very different.
Very different.
And it lit me up like I loved looking at it, right? And so this is a definite change. Let's talk about who this is.
This is Ashley Eliza Williams, and she typically works on 38-inch by 24-inch canvas panels. She deals with a lot of issues in geology, ecology. She paints these gorgeous close-ups on like oil paintings of very organic materials. They're so smooth and streamlined.
Very micro, a lot of texture involved in things like billowing smoke, grasses or foliage that might be, there's one where there's foliage, it's almost like bamboo wrapped in cellophane.
Yeah, and she's also looking at scientific phenomena and these ideas of convergence and going away.
That's it, you nailed it.
She goes really deep with a lot of things, and it was so... I liked the miniature scale here. I was like, oh, she looks cool. And Todd's like, yeah, she's all right. He didn't really
Forgive me because I've changed my tune completely.
So when I was digging deeper, she's totally Todd's type of artist. Like she's totally nailed his aesthetic.
Do I have a type?
You do. So
I have a type?
Yeah. So she's fantastic. She has a website too. She's highly exhibited, mass mocha, artist in residence all over the place. She's shown in Germany, Thailand, China, all over the United States. She's got a couple of websites. She's at Ashley Eliza Williams on Instagram, website aerofauna.com.
Earlier, Mike said the architecture really highlights the light, which pushes the realism and the scale. And that nails it. And I think the light is not, I should say the architecture is part of that, pushing that light. But I think also the camera lens is part of that. Mm-hmm. There was a project I used to do with some of my students where we would build miniature environments. And what we were doing in those is we were number one, we were talking about scale. But I used to do a quick little demo with them on how to wire up, how to solder up LEDs in arrays. And we talked a little bit about resistance and voltage and how to make LEDs work.
Yeah.
And they made these fantastic little arrays of lights that they strategically placed inside of a box. Mm-hmm. And then they created furniture. They created environments, whatever the case may be. It could be dreamlike, right? But here's how we tricked the eye. We used one of those security peepholes that you would put in a door in your apartment. And the distortion involved in that so that it can hit that 160 or 180 degree view angle.
Wow.
Took some of the crappiest craft that, because some students just, they made it quickly and it wasn't really well made. Mm-hmm. But then underneath that distorted lens, it was magic. And so on some level, this really talks about the viewer's perception and this notion of the camera lens. I mean, it was always told to me when I was a young student in my undergrad that great photography can make a mediocre piece of art look really good. Mm-hmm. And it's true because I used to try and take my own slides to apply to grad school. And somebody was like, no, don't do that. So, the lens, I want to take your class. Oh, Mike, that class is fun, man. Oh, yeah, we should do a workshop. I'm all about the workshops. But the lens really plays a part in this. And I would be curious to know what Eben Haines is using to photograph these. I don't think it's an iPhone.
Yeah, I don't think it's an iPhone either. Pumpkin Audrey says, I keep forgetting that they are miniature pieces.
Absolutely.
And that's the beauty of this whole gallery. I will say this wasn't the first space that he created on this level. He was influenced by an earlier project that he had in which they were, I believe it was out in Minneapolis, and there were a group of artists and they all created these cubes, like these little miniature display rooms.
Right.
And they had installation pieces and art pieces in there, and they set it up like a small like miniature galleries.
So we're looking back on the lineage, the eventual DNA strand that gets to this project.
So he had been heavily influenced by that project, and that's kind of what spun this out. And then when the pandemic came up, there was one of the articles had said that he took out the beginnings of this project, dusted it off, and got it ready for some pandemic art. So
and this goes, and you know what I love about that is I am always talking about, and I actually had a little online, I think it was Facebook conversation with an artist friend of mine who's out in Pennsylvania, who talked about this notion of recycling ideas and how there's a cliche that eventually develops when you recycle an idea, and that's why he leaves them behind. And I said, no. Yeah. I said, if the idea comes back, if something requires dusting off and revisiting, there's a reason. You're not done with that yet. Yeah. Right? And to sort of chalk it up to, oh, this might be a cliche, and to throw it in the garbage because you're sticking to that one sort of philosophy, I think could be a mistake, and it would have definitely been a mistake for Eben Haines.
Yeah, definitely. I think this was a process for him, and it resurfaced later on in his life when it was very relevant and important to have. So yeah, and plus this whole entire situation has caused an immense turn inward, right? And we're really struggling, I think, with certain emotional and mental spaces that are very inward, slightly distorted,
possibly at times magical and surreal, right?
Yeah.
And so what better answer to that entire thing than to sort of go inward into this miniature magical kind of space. There's also another side to this that I just want to bring up, and this is there's the beautiful side to it, which I hope I just described, right? This kind of inward connection to the self and this miniature kind of space we're living in. But then there's this other side about fakery, which, and I don't mean in a bad way at all. I'm actually really interested in that kind of fakery. Cliches are to be avoided by bad artists. There you go. But the notion of fakery is something I think we struggle with in social media all the time. It's really become about fakery. And that's what it's really all about.
Yes.
Right? And I love how Eben Haines, on some level, I bet, is just smiling out of the corner of his mouth a little bit.
He's really playful too. Like in his posts, he's like, oh, our workers are really exhausted from hanging the show today. They're all sweaty. Like he makes or he'll say something like the roof is leaking again. Like he makes all these elements of fantasy in this gallery that much more real, but he's doing it with a smile. Like he is, that part of fakery. It's funny that you mentioned the fakery thing too, because the New Yorker came out with an article this week on, Instagrammers and influencing and what they do to achieve this.
Oh my God.
Facade that life is way better and that they're having it all. And I mean, talk about fakery. I mean, they're pretending to go on planes and looking out the window, but they're using a toilet seat as the window on the plane,
right?
And then they
as a frame to look like a
frame, so that they look like they're looking out the window. And so that was
and
really
there's that one project by, and I'm going to completely bonk on his name right now. He calls himself the greatest artist who ever lived. What's his name again?
I forgot.
But he did that whole installation where it's a private jet.
Yes.
That's a complete fake. It travels in a container.
Yep, it's a whole experience.
And
People
you can walk up and
take
Instagram yourself in it to look like you're in a private jet.
Yeah.
So fakery in the time of the pandemic, I shouldn't say that. It's not fakery in the time of the pandemic. Fakery as part of our culture and social media has really grown.
Yes.
Right? And I think what this does is that fakery, that notion of social media as a projection of yourself in some kind of idealized way is a dream, right? So we're trying to show the world this is the dream I have of myself, right? And now that we're shut in to some degree like this, I think what Eben Haines does here, facing a job loss, facing not being able to really make his work the way he wants to, is this represents the dream of what he was pushing towards at that moment when this all screeched to a halt.
Right.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. And so, we were really hoping to get Eben on this show.
Yeah.
We reached out to him.
We did.
We begged and pleaded. We were like, but.
And he was like, oh man, I'm really overwhelmed right now.
They got back to us.
And they do have a lot of projects going on. The biggest news with the Shelter in Place Gallery is that it was recently acquired by the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston.
Right.
So I don't know what the future is. From what I've read, I'm understanding that in September the transition takes place. I could be getting that completely wrong. I think they're going to continue to have shows all the way up until then, but then I don't know what's going to happen. So yeah.
I mean, he mentioned that he might continue on with other projects like this.
Yeah, he thought that maybe he'd start another one.
Yeah. But I mean, I gotta say, I feel like just in terms of the depth of how Eben Haines touched on this whole condition and the necessity that grew out of this condition, this piece moves me immensely.
Yeah.
And I really loved talking about this tonight. I really feel like this is something, and I think also that whether or not the MFA Boston acquired this, whether or not this lives on past that point, I think Eben Haines has altered viewing culture a little bit.
I think so.
In the face of this, that should hopefully live on.
This really is a masterpiece. It really, truly is.
Yeah, foam core and blue painter's tape masterpiece, which I really take my hat off to this one. Yeah. So so that's what we have for you tonight. That's our show.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you think we should do this again, like Pandemic Art Volume 2?
I think so. We'll see how the pandemic plays out. I'm
How do we
sure
top
there's
this?
going to be. Artists are still creating, so I'm sure that there's more to see out there, because we saw 2 great examples tonight with Dana's work and then Eben and Delaney's work.
That's
and
true.
then all the participating artists, I am positive that we're going to see more stuff come out.
That's true. Okay.
Hopefully we'll see artwork about getting over the pandemic and going back out in the world and going back to galleries and galleries opening up. I don't know if it'll ever be the same, but
I want to know what that looks like. I'm really curious to see what and I don't mean hybrid with remote learning where some students are there and some students are home. No, I don't mean that. I mean the new hybrid example of how we appreciate and look at the world once this once this moves on, once we move on out of this space. Everybody's saying great show as usual. Great show, guys. Thanks, Ben. Thanks, Mom. Thanks, Dave. Thanks, David Backus. It says Eben Haines missed out tonight. Yeah, he did. Well,
he could see it on a rerun.
I get it. He's overwhelmed. I get it.
Yeah, he has a lot of attention with this project. Plus, his artwork is fantastic. In addition to that, we were all over his website this weekend. We wanted to buy a painting of his, so I'm sure that he'll get around to seeing it at some point.
Yeah, we'll see. Anyway, let's see. Thanks, Pumpkin Audrey. Birds of Yellow. The pandemic continues. Look at my flowers for the dead. Okay. Yeah. All right. Take care, Sculptori. Great to see artists staying positive, sharing their ideas and work. Yeah, I think that's a big thing, right? I really feel like if we get too down on this whole situation, we're not doing anything productive at that point.
Memory Vessel gave us the thumbs up.
Yes.
Yeah.
And should we mention that a little bit?
Let's mention that, because we were going to mention it next week, but
real quick before anyone leaves, Memory Vessel, who's a supporter of ours and a longtime friend of ours, has a really interesting project that she texted me about an hour before we were supposed to go on, which I was just like, crap. There's no way I could get this into the mix right now. Yeah. But we're going to be celebrating Memory Vessel's birthday next week. We're going to mention it on the show.
Yep, she's March 8th.
Yep.
Right?
Yep, she's March 8th. And talk about like a little bit of project envy. And I'm gonna put this out there. I'm gonna put a little spoiler out there. Memory Vessel has a time capsule that she's gonna open on her 50th birthday that she put together 25 years ago. So talk about a treasure. Yeah. That's a treasure. So we're going to talk about that next week. We'll show you a little bit of her work next week as a little feature for her birthday. Mm-hmm. But thanks for reaching out on that. We're just like, we were talking about that just before we went on. Yeah. So we are super excited about that. Let's see. Carolyn Thau, I have a great artist that created some fabulous work. We'll talk offline. Okay, that sounds cool. I love backstories. Great show. Thanks, Carolyn. Thanks, Birds of Yellow. Appreciate that. Memory Vessel's like, woohoo. All right, people. We love you guys, and thank you for supporting us as usual. We look forward to seeing you next week, where we hope to bring you another great show.
Yes.
All right. Take care, everyone. Cheers.